one thing that I know, it looks like we're reconnecting to go live right here. What happened? We're back live. But, you know, to your point, Noah, Bender's got to be able to put on weight. He's got to be able to play the four. Earl Watson said during one of the interviews during Summer League that he sees Bender eventually possibly being the starter at the four position. They're going to start Dudley, or it might have been Ryan McDonough, but the Suns front office, and Cody and I are actually going to get a chance to talk to them later. We're going to be interviewing Ryan McDonough and Suns coach Earl Watson, but Watson says that he sees Bender potentially starting at the four, and once you put him at the four instead of the three, and to be honest with you, positions are becoming less and less meaningful in basketball. I think that's one of the things the Suns are having a lot of fun testing out is these different small lineups. And I think with Chris showing that he can be an active defender, it is something that we're going to be able to have a benefit on that side of the ball. And the Suns should be able to put themselves in a position to have a lot of versatility at worst when it comes to the forward position. As far as Marquise Chris goes, his athleticism was obvious. That he had some highlight dunks and was able to show the Suns fans exactly what they may see from him if he ever gets on a pick and roll and is able to get the ball moving with some downhill momentum. He'll rip the backboard down. I mean, he is absolutely a fantastic flying athlete. Cody, what'd you like from Marquise?
Well, aside from, his athleticism, which definitely carried over from Washington, something that was surprising was, we talked about it a little bit, but his rebounding was a definite surprise, and I like to see it because, and I think it was in the second game against Boston in the Summer League where he grabbed 14 rebounds, which was more rebounds than ever in his Washington career. He never had more rebounds in a game than he had in that game against the Summer League Celtics. So that was really good to see. He does need to improve on a more consistent jump shot from mid-range. Because you can't always rely on being able to dunk on people over and over, because eventually defenders are going to get sick of that and do things to prevent you from dunking on them constantly. I kind of make a comparison to Blake Griffin in a way where when Blake Griffin first came into the league, all he did was dunk on people, and defenders kind of adjusted to that, and then he was forced to kind of develop his mid-range jump shot, and it ended up being a decent one. I mean, jump shot in the world, but he can make a few mid-range jumpers. So I think Marquise Chris has to do that as well, because, guys aren't going to let you dunk on them your entire career unless, I don't know, unless you're Michael Jordan or something like that. But yeah, I think Chris, his athleticism is a definite plus. You can't teach athleticism. It's kind of just it's in your genes. So I think the Suns got a good pick at number 8 there after the trade. If he develops a consistent jump shot, then I think Marquise Chris is going to see some significant minutes in the rotation.
Yeah, and I don't want to talk about the Summer League too much longer, but the Suns are a team where, because their main form of success comes in the form of developing these young guys, I did want to take some time just to dive into them a little more, because these are players that we really are going to see a lot of minutes from. And I think you're absolutely right. Chris having 14 rebounds in a game is encouraging. Now, there were certainly plays where he looked disengaged. Jaylen Brown pushed him off of his spot multiple times and showed that somebody with an NBA body and an active defender may be able to aggravate Chris, make him so that he takes bad shots. He still pulls up for mid-range jumpers, way too much for me, outside the flow of the offense. I think those are things that the Suns are going to focus on and try to make sure that they get something out of him, that they can at least be happy with the way he's playing. All that IQ, all that basketball knowledge stuff that he may be slower in developing because he didn't start basketball until I believe he was 14 years old. He's got a lot less time playing organized ball, and so he's still learning how to play with teammates. I'm sure being the most athletic person at every level he played at basically until now made it so that he was able to rely on that athleticism more than he may be able to in the NBA. And so he's going to have to put himself in a position to continue to develop in those areas. And that leads me directly into the next area of the Summer Suns review. The Suns have been pretty quiet in free agency. They have signed 2 free agents. They signed Jared Dudley, former Sun, to a 3-year, $30 million contract, 10,000 of which I think was spent to get Dragon Bender to give up the number 3. It sounds like Jared Dudley hasn't released the terms. We know he made an offer over social media to get that number 3 from Bender of $10,000, but we're not entirely sure whether the transaction took place. It's definitely something I plan on asking Dudley about in person. But, the junkyard dog is back. And for $10 million a year, I think the Suns not only got a bargain for a guy who's going to shoot over 40% from 3 and play within the offense, but a great leader and role model. And, is it worth it, Noah? I mean, is $10 million worth it for a guy that is going to eat up some of the minutes of your young guy's development? He is going to take some of the time away from Chris or TJ Warren or Dragon Bender. Is that the right move for Phoenix? Was that a smart signing?
It depends on how they use him. I agree with you when, he's a guy who's going to be reliable from 3. He brings some leadership to the floor, but you have to use him the right way. You can't expect him to be a player who's going to play every game or, be on the court more minutes than Chris or Bender. You use him as PJ Tucker. That's who you use him as, but on an offensive role. PJ Tucker, I think, he's a lost cause in Phoenix. I like him, yep. And I think that he's still a good player, but there's no need for him. Phoenix has no need for PJ Tucker right now, and they kind of showed that by signing Dudley. I think Dudley will play more of a 3 than the 4 role, and guys like Devin Booker, who could play a little bit of 3 if they need him to, and TJ Warren. He's kind of just a role player for them. Players who need a break, who have played a long game, a tiring game, who are struggling a little bit, get them off, let them clear their head a little bit, and let Jared Dudley go in because he's reliable. You could send Dudley in for 4 minutes a game and he could still hit 3 threes in a row, and then you could pull him off, and there it is. There's his game. He's one of those guys. He's not expected to play a ton of minutes, but he could perform ice cold. He just comes off the bench, does what he needs to do, and goes back on the bench. That's his role in Phoenix, and I think that's what they expect of him. And because of that, if they use him that way, yeah, it's a great role. Now, on the other hand, if they expect him to be the number 2 small forward or the number 2 power forward and take minutes away from Chris or Bender, then it's a terrible idea, and it was a terrible signing. He was a steal. $30 million is a steal. But if you're going to use him the right way, then it's a good deal. And if not, then, he just kind of turns into a PJ Tucker who's taking away from development.
Yeah, and I don't want to be too harsh on Dudley, and I think that the instinct, at least in the articles we've posted on Valley of the Suns about Dudley, the response is that people were pretty upset with the signing. Me personally, I watched Jared Dudley lead the league in 3-point shooting going into the All-Star break, and then the Markieff Morris trade that sent him to Washington where Dudley was at essentially ate into Dudley's minutes, and obviously Markieff Morris brings everyone around him down, somebody the Suns were hoping would create addition by subtraction, and Dudley ended up 8th in the league in 3-point shooting. So we're not just talking about a good 3-point shooter, we're talking about a great 3-point shooter, and the way he creates space on the floor and understands what the offense is trying to do is going to help everyone be more successful at learning the offense. I also think Dudley is a criminally underrated defender. People just eat him alive. But last year, in terms of defensive real plus minus at the at the position that Dudley plays, small forward, he was number 17 in all of the NBA, whereas people like Mirza Teletovic was number 96 out of 99 or something like that, or 98 out of 99. Archie Goodwin is one of the worst statistical defenders in the NBA at his position. Devin Booker was one of the worst statistical defenders in the NBA at his position. So Jared Dudley adds a level of class, even a better defender, even though people may not see it and people like PJ Tucker because he has this gritty perception. Dudley has that same grittiness. Dudley has the same ability to defend 3s and 4s that Tucker does and can defend the best wing player on the opposing team successfully, maybe not as physically as Tucker does, but he's just a better player. And the people who think that PJ Tucker's a better player than Jared Dudley are just wrong. Jared Dudley's a better player. He appears to be a better leader. He's more vocal on offense. He can make more than just a corner 3. So I think you're right, Noah, that PJ Tucker is becoming obsolete. I wouldn't be surprised if we saw him moved to a team that has championship aspirations, like a San Antonio Spurs, like a Houston Rockets, I know that's a far-fetched championship hope, but they always have hope out there. Like the Cleveland Cavaliers, where they need somebody to help defend the absolute nonsense that's going on over in Golden State now, and the Borg that they've created to try and take out the NBA. PJ Tucker may be an asset, but he's certainly not one here in Phoenix. So that being said, the other signing was of Leandro Barbosa, another former Sun, another bargain deal. Cody, we're talking 2 years, $8 million. The second year isn't even guaranteed. $500,000 of it's only guaranteed. So if the Suns don't want to move forward next year with Barbosa, great. But he is the 6th guard on the Suns team. So what's the deal with the Barbosa signing?
I mean, I like it in terms of a veteran presence, like kind of like Dudley, but for the guards, I guess. But the surprise, I was kind of surprised when they signed Barbosa, even though it was for almost no money. But because they do have Eric Bledsoe, they have Devin Booker, Brandon Knight, and now they drafted Tyler Ulis. So I'm not sure how many minutes Barbosa is going to get. This seems like it could be his last go around in the NBA. But I was just kind of surprised of the signing because they don't seem to need another point guard, but who knows? This team loves their point guards. But I like the Barbosa signing in terms of leadership and just grooming some of the younger guards. But I don't know how much he's going to affect the minutes of Tyler Ulis. If Barbosa ends up playing and a lot and then affects Ulis's minutes in a negative way, then I'm not sure if I like that signing or not.
Yeah, and Barbosa could just be an insurance policy.
Sure, yeah.
As we talked about, the Suns are considering moving different players. They've been rumored to be considering trading Eric Bledsoe. Despite the leadership role he's been taking on over the summer, they've talked about trading Brandon Knight, Tyson Chandler. Chandler obviously doesn't affect the guard position, but in the event they suffer through some of the injuries they dealt with last year with Bledsoe and Knight, or if they end up having to move one of those guys because they're trying to create more minutes on the roster at the guard position for people like Devin Booker and Tyler Ulis, I think that's where you could see Barbosa playing a role. He really likes it here in the Valley. He was on a championship team in Golden State. He understands what the offense wants to do once again. A lot of this is about X's and O's. It's not just about the maturity that these guys bring. I think you make a good point earlier, Cody, about the professionalism and just showing people what it means to be a professional basketball player on and off the court. But on the court specifically, Barbosa knows what the Suns want to do. He knows what a championship team looks like. He knows the importance of moving the ball and keeping it moving. That's something that Brandon Knight didn't show a great quality for. He is more of a ball stopper, Brandon Knight, than Barbosa. So I think the Suns see actual on-the-court potential with Barbosa, but there's definitely a logjam at the guard position, and it's going to be pretty interesting to see what the Suns do about it. As far as the rest of free agency goes, the Suns have $18.6 million in cap space, according to Nate Duncan and Danny LaRue on the Dunked On podcast. I was listening to them talk about just what the Suns have done so far in free agency and what they have left to do. I don't know that they do anything. I don't know that the Suns sign anybody. The way the salary cap works is the Suns have to spend a percentage of the cap, which is called the salary floor, so that they're spending the money that the players have available to them, essentially. Now, the consequence for not doing that, the consequence for coming in below the salary floor, isn't all that damning. We're talking, all that happens is the Suns ownership, if they don't meet the salary floor, will have to distribute the difference between the floor and what they spent to the players on the roster currently. So everybody on the Suns roster gets a little bit of a bonus. So there's not as much pressure as some may assume to reach that salary floor, but $18.6 million in cap space is a lot of money. And the Suns want to keep some of it for flexibility, but at the same time, Mo Harkless is a restricted free agent that's out there, 23 years old. Not a great perimeter player, but definitely has untapped potential. Whether he reaches that potential, I don't know. Noah, what do you think about going out and getting somebody like Mo Harkless, or spending some of that money, 2 years, $35 million to bring Mo Harkless in?
I think they're done. I understand that they have to hit the floor, the salary floor, but I don't know how they're going to do it. Maybe you readjust some contracts, give some players a little more money, propose a trade, as rumors are flying around. But when it comes to a guy like Mo Harkless, he's just a guy, like I said with Dudley, who's just gonna, or PJ Tucker, who's just gonna take up minutes. He's still a little underdeveloped. His best season was his rookie year in Orlando, and even then, it really wasn't a great year. He's never even averaged more than 5 rebounds a game, and the Suns don't really need another player like that. In my opinion, he's young, obviously, and he still has a ton of potential. And his college career at St. John's was fantastic. I loved watching him play. He was a real athletic guy who could play the 3 or the 4, and played both sides of the ball. But when he hit the NBA, it didn't really pan out, and he's still working on it. And I'm sure that some team will find him as a valuable 7-8 man, coming off the bench as a role player. But in Phoenix, I'm not really too keen on bringing him in, just because you have guys like Chris and Bender who need to develop, and you don't need to bring somebody else in who's going to stall that development on your future stars.
Yeah, I think that there is something to be said because the prospects, Bender and Chris, are such high ceiling but still a long way from fully developed prospects. In Mo Harkless, it's sort of a short-term insurance policy if you don't see what you want from those guys. And maybe you catch Harkless on the way up. He is only 23 years old. But you might be right. The Suns very well may be done in free agency. But one of the things that they're going to have to deal with all year long is the trade rumor mill. And that's the final thing I wanted to talk about this summer. The Suns have been linked at times, even by myself, to possible trades with the Clippers to see if Blake Griffin's available, because it sounds like, the Clippers had been shopping Blake Griffin a little bit. The Russell Westbrook potential trades, because he is going to be a free agent next year, and Oklahoma City doesn't want to just have him leave like Kevin Durant did. They're hoping they may get something in return. I think the likelihood that Oklahoma City trades Westbrook is very high. Now, the concern in Phoenix with trading an asset like Dragon Bender, Marquise Chris, or Devin Booker for someone like Russell Westbrook is he going to immediately go into free agency? Only teams really, like the New York Knicks, LA Lakers, maybe the Clippers, have the ability to trade for him and negotiate an immediate re-sign. If the Lakers wanted to trade for him, it wouldn't blow my mind that he tells the Thunder, sign me to an extension and trade me to LA. In Phoenix, though, that seems a lot more far-fetched. It seems like if the Suns did trade for him, that he would still go back into the free agent market. Now, trading for a player like Westbrook would still have its advantages, even if he decides to enter free agency. The bird rights that come along with having Russell Westbrook would allow the Suns to sign him to a 5th year rather than just 4 years. Now, this is assuming the collective bargaining agreement stays similar to what it is now, which is being renegotiated. But under the current agreement, they'd not only be able to offer him a 5th year, but they'd be able to offer him tens of millions of more dollars than the next closest team, and obviously would have a year to try and show off the city of Phoenix, what he could be here in terms of a face of the franchise. And if you want to talk about a scary backcourt, Russell Westbrook and Devin Booker, I mean, Westbrook played with Durant, but other than Kevin Durant, they always really lacked shooting around him. He's never played with another good guard. We're talking Kevin Martin, Cameron Payne, Reggie Jackson and him didn't really spend a lot of time on the court together. Andre Roberson, guys who can't shoot. So if you put someone like Westbrook in with Booker, I mean, Cody, why not? Why not make a big splash? Why not make a blockbuster trade? Why not trade Marquise Chris and 2 first-round picks to Oklahoma City for a year at the chance to keep Russell Westbrook?
Well, it's kind of hard to decide, but for me anyway, but the prospect of having Russell Westbrook and Devin Booker alongside each other is just one that it's just so hard to look at and then say, oh, I want to pass on that. But at the same time, I don't know if the Suns want to trade a guy like Marquise Chris or Dragan Bender and then more first-round picks for just a year of Russell Westbrook and the potential that he won't come back. I think if the Suns make a deal like that, they're going to want to have some insurance that Russell Westbrook is going to they can either do a sign and trade or work something out. But I don't know if the Suns are in a position to make a kind of trade like that, because even with Russell Westbrook here, the Suns aren't winning a championship anytime soon with the supporting cast, even if they had Russell Westbrook here. So I don't know. I would say if they made a trade like that, I think they would have to have some kind of insurance or an actual deal done that Russell Westbrook would be in Phoenix for a while. I don't think they would trade a guy like Marquise Chris, who they traded picks to get, and then more picks for just maybe 1 year of Russell Westbrook and then him leaving. But that's just my opinion.
Yeah, and Noah, what about the draft picks? The Suns have the Heat pick in next year's draft. They've got another Heat pick down the road. There's very limited protection on those picks. They seem to have pretty great value. The Suns have their own first-round picks. What if the package was pick-centered? Why not trade both of the Miami picks and one young player, TJ Warren and Brandon Knight, or Eric Bledsoe, or I would prefer to keep Bledsoe, but let's say Brandon Knight, TJ Warren, and 2 first-round picks for Russell Westbrook.
If you could pull that off, if they could pull that off, they better, because Brandon Knight, as everybody expects, he's a guy he's right there, top of the trading block. He could leave any minute now, and of course, like Cody said, bringing Russell Westbrook in is scary because you don't know if he's going to stay. But if you could do a sign and trade, like he said, and keep him for even if it's 2 years, in 2 years, this Suns team will be developed enough that they can make a playoff push. They could get to the playoffs and possibly make some noise, depending on if this Golden State super team stays together or not, and the NBA just falls apart. But if they can impress, Russell Westbrook could be looking to stay in Phoenix. They have young guys like Booker, like Chris, like Bender, who want to develop and grow and have all the potential in the world. And Russell Westbrook could still be the superstar, which is what he wants. He wants to be the guy somewhere who gets paid a lot of money, and Phoenix has a lot of money and doesn't have that guy. And that's what Russell Westbrook wants. So if you could pull off a trade like TJ Warren and Brandon Knight and a couple of draft picks, then do it. I mean, I don't know what you're really going to get in the draft next year, except for some role players, unless you can pull off a star small forward or
give it 1 second to see if it kicks back on live, and if it doesn't, we'll have to just, I'm not entirely sure what exactly happened here. All right. So that being said, I think we did experience a couple of little glitches here, our first time doing this podcast in terms of the technical aspects, but overall it was great. The Suns had a bright summer, great performance in Summer League. They've got a lot of young prospects to look forward to. Free agency isn't over yet. They've still got $18.6 million to spend. Hopefully it is something that they will be able to be patient and be conservative, and we'll see what they decide to do. It's definitely going to be a fun 2016-2017. Noah, why don't you tell everybody one last time where they can find you on Twitter and online?
You guys can all find me at valleyofthesuns.com. I am once again the editor there, so most of my articles will be published as well as Cody's and Kyle's. Also, you can find me on Twitter at Noah Strack, and give me a follow. I love to chat. I love to talk to fans and get some sports opinions.
Cody, where can we find you?
Yeah, like Noah said, valleyofthesuns.com. Just been writing there for a few weeks, but look for more stuff from me. And then on Twitter, you can follow me at Cody_Fincher92. And yeah, like Noah said, I like to get into some conversations with some fans and have some debates or whatever you want to do. So yeah, give me a follow.
And thank you both for being on the pod. My name is Kyle Flieger. I will be with you Thursday for our general NBA podcast. We'll just be going over some of the league news and notes, some of the fun things to happen, like Tim Duncan retiring. That warms the heart of all Suns fans. And you can find me at Suns Debate on Twitter and at Valley of the Suns. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for being patient with us through the technical difficulties. We will get better, and we appreciate you tuning in. Thanks, everyone.